I want to start today by asking you to just, look at the room around you.
Okay.
Or if you're driving, maybe the road. You see objects, right? A steering wheel, a desk, a coffee cup.
Things you can touch. Things that feel solid, real.
Exactly. You know they're real because you can touch them, you can measure them.
Yeah.
If you drop that coffee cup, gravity, which we can actually calculate, is going to pull it to the floor.
It's a comforting thought, isn't it? That the physical world makes sense. We gather data, and we call that truth.
Right. And we live in a world that is just obsessed with data. You always hear, trust the science.
Show me the numbers.
Exactly. We treat that empirical data as the gold standard for reality. But here's the question that it might break your brain a little bit today.
Uh-oh.
Does that standard actually hold up for everything?
Right. I mean, does measuring things really work when you're trying to understand a painting or a profound religious experience?
Or why one culture embraces a new technology and another one just refuses to?
That is the cliff edge we are standing on today.
It is. We are doing a deep dive into a research paper that is, look, it's dense, it's technically heavy, but it's also kind of mind-blowing.
It's titled A Comparative Analysis of 12 Research Paradigms across 6 knowledge acquisitions and 12 sources of knowledge.
What a mouthful.
I know, it sounds like something you'd use to prop open a door. But the ambition of this thing is just massive. They took 12 different paradigms.
So basically 12 different pairs of glasses for viewing the world.
Perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
And they pitted them against 6 different domains of knowledge to see which one actually, works.
It's like they set up a philosophical cage match.
In a way, yeah. They looked at science, philosophy, history, art, religion, and culture. And the mission was to answer this huge question. Is there one master paradigm that rules them all?
Is the scientific method really the skeleton key for the universe?
Or are we just trying to open a lock with a hammer?
And the result. But let's just say they are surprising, especially when we get to the statistics. And yes, there are statistics.
Oh, that part is a shocker. When you see how much scientists agree with each other versus how much culture experts agree.
It totally flips the script on what we think of as objective.
It does.
But, okay, before we get to that twist, we have to talk about the heavyweight champion. The paradigm most of us use by default, probably without even knowing its name.
Positivism.
Positivism.
Right. This is the water we all swim in. When people say, I believe in science, they're usually talking about positivism.
So it's the view that true knowledge comes only from empirical observation.
Exclusively.
Yeah.
You observe, you experiment, you measure. If you can't measure it, it's not knowledge, it's just, opinion.
So in this study, they scored these paradigms on a scale of 0 to 3. And I'm guessing positivism just crushed it in science.
Absolutely. In the domains of science and philosophy, especially when the focus was purely on empirical data, positivism scored a 2.1 out of 3.
Which is really strong.
Very strong. It's built for that. It's fantastic at telling us what is happening physically. It gives us technology, medicine, all of it. If you want to build a bridge, please use positivism.
I definitely want my bridge builder to believe in gravity.
Me too.
But this is where the paper throws a real wrench in the gears. While positivism is a giant in the lab, it seems to just completely fall apart when you take it outside.
It really does. So when the researchers tested it in what they call the interpretive focus, so think fields like art, religion, and culture, its score fell off a cliff. It dropped to a 0.6.
0.6. That's barely on the board. That's a failing grade.
It is. And this is the core critique of the paper. Positivism just struggles with art or religion because you can't measure subjective experience. You can't take a ruler to ethical nuance.
You can't put a cultural tradition in a test tube.
Exactly.
So let's play this out. If I'm a researcher and I rely only on positivism to understand, say, anthropology, what happens?
You get an oversimplification, a caricature of reality. You might capture behavioral patterns like 80% of people in this village wake up at 6 a.m., but you totally miss the why.
The social structures, the cultural contexts.
The fears, the hopes, all of the things that actually drive that behavior. You see the movement, but you don't hear the music.
That's a great way to put it. You see the dance steps, but you're missing the rhythm. So if the data-driven approach can't explain everything, what can?
Well, the paper introduces us to what I like to call the interpretive squad.
The interpretive squad. I like it. Who are the heavy hitters?
Okay, so if positivism is about measuring, these paradigms are about meaning. And first up, we have hermeneutics.
Hermeneutics. Okay, that's a word I feel like I only hear in theology classes.
Yeah, and historically, that's right. It was used to interpret religious texts like, what did this ancient author actually mean? But now it's about meaning-making in a much broader sense. It excelled in art and religion with a total score of 172.
172. How does that compare to positivism's total score?
Positivism's total was around 100.
Hmm.
So hermeneutics is significantly more robust when you look at the whole picture of human knowledge.
Why so high? Is it just because it handles feelings better?
It's deeper than feelings. It's about context and ethics. Think about something like bioethics or the dilemmas we face right now with AI.
Right.
Hard data positivism can tell you what an AI can do. It can calculate processing speed, but it cannot tell you what an AI should do.
The data can say this self-driving car will save X number of lives if it swerves, but it can't tell you the morality of choosing who gets hit.
Exactly. That's where hermeneutics comes in. It interprets the moral implications, the human context. You can't calculate morality, you have to interpret it.
Now, another big player in this group was feminism. And I think we should pause here because when some people hear feminism, they might just think of political activism.
Right.
But we are talking about a rigorous research paradigm here.
Precisely. It's not a political stance. It's a lens for analysis. And it scored very high, with a total of 170. It did exceptionally well in culture and philosophy.
So what does that feminist lens see that the positivist lens completely misses?
In a word, power. That is the key. Positivism is often totally blind to power dynamics. It sees data points as neutral.
And they're not.
Feminism argues they're rarely neutral. As a research paradigm, it asks, who holds the power here? Whose voices are being silenced in this data set? How do social structures affect the marginalized?
So if you're studying a company, positivism just gives you the org chart.
And feminism asks why the org chart looks that way in the first place. It exposes those invisible currents of influence and oppression that raw numbers just can't see.
Then you have things like constructivism. This one always trips people up.
Okay, simple analogy. Imagine you and a friend are looking at a cloud. You see a bunny, your friend sees a dragon.
Okay.
Positivism would try to measure the water vapor to see who's right. Constructivism says you are both creating your own reality based on your imagination and experiences.
So reality isn't just out there waiting to be discovered.
Not entirely. In fields like history or education, reality is co-created. It's constructed by society. I mean, a dollar bill is just a piece of paper, physically. But we have constructed a reality where it has value.
Positivism sees the paper. Constructivism sees the economy.
That's it.
That's a huge distinction. So, okay, we have the data side with positivism. Great for atoms, bad for people. And the interpretive side, great for meaning, but maybe it lacks that hard empirical edge.
So is there a middle ground?
Yeah, are there any paradigms that try to build a bridge?
There are. The study highlights the versatile players. And the absolute star of the show here is pragmatism.
Pragmatism. It sounds sensible.
That is literally the point. Pragmatism had the highest total score across all domains, 181. It beat everyone.
Wow, so it's the action hero of paradigms.
You could say that. The philosophy of pragmatism just focuses on what works. It's less concerned with some abstract capital T truth.
And more concerned with practical outcomes.
Yes, it bridges the gap because it values both data and experience as long as they solve the problem at hand.
Can you give me a real-world example? What does a pragmatic approach look like?
Think about public policy. Let's say you want to eradicate a disease. You need the positivism part, the technical side, to know if the vaccine works.
The hard science.
But you also need the interpretive part to know if people will actually trust the doctors and take it.
Right. If you only have the science, you have a warehouse full of vaccines nobody uses. If you only have the culture, you have trust, but no medicine.
Exactly. Pragmatism says, use whatever tool gets the job done. It's the Swiss Army knife of research.
Okay, and then there's critical realism. This one sounds a bit more academic.
It is, but it's fascinating. Think of critical realism as the deep detective. It loves science, it respects empirical data, but it also acknowledges these deep underlying social structures that we can't always see.
How's it different from pragmatism?
Think of an iceberg. Positivism measures the tip, what you see above water. Critical realism acknowledges that tip, but it's obsessed with the massive structure under the water that supports it.
So back to the disease example.
Positivism tracks the germ. It measures infection rates. Critical realism asks, why is it spreading faster in this neighborhood? It looks for the unseen structures, inequality, housing policies, social stigmas that are driving the physical data.
It connects the germ to the society.
That's it.
I really want to geek out for a second on how they actually came up with these rankings. Because this wasn't just a thought experiment, right? They used some serious stats to measure philosophy.
A bit meta, isn't it?
Yeah.
But they were very rigorous. They used that scoring system, but then they ran a sensitivity analysis.
A stress test for ideas?
Basically, yes. They ran simulations. What if we only care about science? How do the rankings change? Then, what if we only care about art? And finally, what if we care about everything equally?
And this is where we found a surprise winner. We said pragmatism had the highest raw score, but another paradigm was actually the most versatile.
This was so fascinating. When they looked at that balanced focus, all domains equal critical theory was most consistent performer. The difference in its score across all the simulations was only 0.01.
Zero point oh 0.01. That is incredibly stable.
It's rock solid. It means it offers a consistent framework whether you're looking at science or art. Meanwhile, positivism.
It was one of the least versatile, right?
Its score was 3.04. A huge swing. It's a one-trick pony. Genius in the lab, completely lost in the art gallery.
But critical theory and pragmatism can navigate both worlds.
Without losing their footing.
Now, speaking of statistics, there was one finding that genuinely made me laugh out loud. The inter-rater reliability test.
The Fleiss Kappa test. This was the biggest twist of the whole study.
Okay, so walk us through this. You'd assume that science is objective, facts are facts, so you'd expect the experts looking at the science domain to agree with each other perfectly.
You would think so. That's the whole promise of science universal agreement on the facts. But the result was the complete opposite. In the domain of science, the evaluators disagreed. The Kappa score was negative 0.026.
Negative. I know enough about stats to know that 0 is just random chance. A negative score means they were actively disagreeing with each other.
They were worse than random chance. It's wild. It suggests that even when we look at science, we're bringing our own philosophical biases. One expert sees truth, another sees flawed methodology.
Even facts are subject to interpretation.
Depending on your paradigm, yes.
But then you look at the culture domain. You'd think that would be the Wild West of opinions.
Right, total chaos. But in culture, there was substantial agreement. The Kappa score was 0.689.
That is incredible. The experts agreed more on culture than they did on science. How on earth is that possible?
It tells us that when people operate in interpretive fields, like anthropology, there's a strong shared understanding of the framework. They share assumptions about context. But in science, the friction between pure data and interpretation creates a ton of noise.
We think science is settled, but the meaning of the science is deeply contested.
Okay, exactly.
So we have all this theory, these scores, the shock that scientists can't agree. But what does this look like on the ground? The paper gives us a really specific example.
Yes, the Indonesian entrepreneurship case study. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is why this stuff actually matters.
Okay, so set the scene. You're a consultant trying to boost startups in Indonesia. The old school positivist way would be to look at the hard numbers.
Right. GDP, interest rates, business licenses. You'd look at the data that worked in Silicon
And
Valley.
you'd say, okay, let's just lower interest rates, build an incubator, and boom, the next Google.
Exactly. But the researchers argue that if you only did that, you would fail because you'd miss what actually drives behavior in Indonesia. You're using a map of New York in the streets of Jakarta.
So they used a mix, a multi-paradigm approach. What did that look like?
They combined three distinct tools. First, autoethnography.
Storytelling as data, basically.
Yes, they looked at personal sparkling moments from childhood that shape people's mindset, and they found that in Indonesia, family culture and community honor are massive drivers for entrepreneurs. You can't find that in a GDP report.
Okay, so that's the personal narrative. What else?
Then they used system dynamics, something called causal loop diagrams.
Sounds technical.
It is, but it's visual. It's like a map of consequences. It helps you see the whole system and map out the real barriers in the economy that stop those sparkling moments from becoming businesses.
And finally,
Pragmatism. They used pragmatism to design the actual accelerator programs. They didn't just copy-paste a generic model. They built one that was culturally sensitive to those family values while still hitting the necessary business metrics.
the lesson being, if they had just used positivism, they would have built a program that looked good on paper but failed in reality.
Because it ignored the soul of the country, they would have missed the human element that actually drives the data.
It makes you wonder how many failed policies are actually just paradigm failures. We use the wrong lens, so we solve the wrong problem.
I think it happens constantly. We try to solve employee burnout with more money, a positivist solution, when the problem is a lack of purpose, which is a hermeneutic problem.
Or we fix education with standardized testing instead of asking how students actually construct meaning.
Yes.
So where does this leave us? We've bashed positivism a bit, praised pragmatism. What's the final verdict? Can we just pick one and go home?
The verdict from the paper is clear. No single paradigm is enough.
We can't just pick a favorite.
No. And the paper explicitly warns against becoming a jack of all trades, master of none.
Which happens when people just flip-flop between methods without any discipline.
Exactly. They grab a little data here, a little feeling there, and it becomes a mess.
Yeah.
It's not about being sloppy.
So it's about a disciplined, multi-paradigm approach.
That's the key. We need positivism. We absolutely need the data, the rigor. We need to know if the bridge will hold. But we also need the humility to admit the data isn't the whole story. We need hermeneutics and feminism for the context and the ethics behind that data.
You mentioned humility. I think that is such a powerful word to end on here.
It's the core value of this entire study. Acknowledging that your preferred way of seeing the world, even if you are a hard-nosed scientist, has blind spots. True knowledge requires the humility to put down your favorite tool and pick up the right one for the job.
I love that. It's like realizing you've been trying to paint a sunset with a calculator.
It's just not the right tool.
And sometimes you've been trying to build a bridge with a paintbrush, which is just as dangerous.
That's a perfect analogy. The wisdom is in knowing the difference.
So as you go about your week, here is something to chew on. Think about a problem you're trying to solve at work, in a relationship, anywhere.
Are you only looking at the measurable data? The positivism?
He said X words, the profit is Y dollars.
And just ask yourself,
Mm.
what would happen if you applied a hermeneutic lens? What if you stopped counting and asked about the meaning? Or a feminist lens? What are the power dynamics here?
You might find that the answer you've been looking for isn't in the numbers at all.
And with that, we'll leave you to your own deep dive.
Thanks for listening.